It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And welcome into Judd's Hockey Show. Judd Zolgad, Declan Goff, another late night edition of Judd's Hockey Show, which for a while tonight I thought might be, it might be us discussing a fourth consecutive Wild loss to open the season and what would have been a disastrous homestand. But against the Vancouver Canucks, the Wild rally for an overtime victory. Kirill Kaprizov with his fourth goal of the season and his third point of the game. He also had 2 assists. Matt Zuccarello, 2 goals and 1 assist. And Declan, the homestand nightmare is over. The Wild gets a point. They will now go on the road for, I believe it's a 5-game road trip starting on Saturday in Boston. Jordan Greenway, by the way, who returned tonight and then got hurt again, according to Dean Evison, suffered an upper body injury. That's not the shoulder problem that he had during the offseason. Will not play on Saturday. His return is unknown. But let's start with the good news. The Wild gets 2 points. They get their first win, and the second and third period, Marc-Andre Fleury was pretty damn near brilliant. So there's a lot to get to. There's a lot of things not to like, but there are a few things to like, and I think starting with Flower and goal, who'd been just awful in 4 periods, that's probably the highlight of the night, in my opinion, for this team.
Few things. You don't got to apologize for wins, and especially when it's your first win and when you have dropped the first 3 games of the season. Now, 4-game homestand, 8 potential points. You only walk away with 2. Obviously less than ideal. There are still lapses in this team. There are still warts in this team that could be 100% fixed. But at the same time, your superstar player in Kirill Kaprizov rose up, delivered an overtime goal for you. 1 goal, 2 assists, played like 24 minutes tonight. I mean, the guy was all over the ice in classic superstar fashion, so you can't be too upset about that. And yeah, you take any type of win, you can get one. Any type of win you can get anywhere right now. And when you start 0-3, that's the case. And they rallied, and they were able to show that. That's great. There's still certainly some flaws here with this team. But at the same time, yes, I thought Marc-Andre Fleury the last 2 periods, and then obviously into overtime too. I know he wasn't really busy in the overtime portion, but played spectacular tonight. I tweeted out some stats that I'm sure we'll get into here later on that just it's not all on Marc-Andre Fleury, and I think that's what we're seeing here through 4 games. Yes, could the goaltending be better, and could the goaltending bail you out, and can goaltending kind of cover up for bad things when it's spectacular? Of course it can. The problem with the Wild side of that is they have a 38-year-old goaltender who is still, I think, capable and being able, a capable number 1 guy that can be able to ride for a long portion of the season. He's no longer the goalie that he used to be, so you can't put him in positions to be unsuccessful. And the Wild defense still has to clean that up, and I think that's what's so mind-boggling so far. But hell, it's a win. You'll take it anywhere you can get it. Congrats to the Wild. They actually picked up their first win. They're not 0-4. They're 1-3.
Yeah, and Fleury had 8 shots on goal against in the first period. The 2 goals that he gave up were defensive breakdowns, make no mistake. Now, the thing is, did he make the huge save in that period? No, he didn't. He then saved 17 of 18 shots in the second and third period combined and made some great saves. I thought in the third period he was absolutely brilliant. There were several chances that the Canucks had, and the goal that he did give up, he actually made a great save on. Caprizov lost his man. Calen Addison, I think, was originally at fault, but nonetheless, that was actually a nice save. And then the puck got tapped in by the same guy when he went backhand forehand. But that being said, Fleury's play, I mean, that's the most important thing here is because you're right. The Wild definitely has some defensive problems and deficiencies right now. But Fleury, the first period on Saturday night against the Kings was scary because the last goal was awful and he was not playing well. It's funny, just to set the scene from the Wild room where I just came from, on Saturday, Fleury came out and answered the questions and dropped an F-bomb for how bad he was playing in his mind, and he apologized. He didn't have to, but he was make no mistake, because he's a nice guy. He was pissed off, and he should have been pissed off. Tonight he got done talking to us, and he still had his pads on, and he leaned back in his locker stall and dropped an F-bomb, this time of relief, like, phew, and he just, like, it was like, because the pressure comes off you.
Yep.
Now, where I think there's still some concern, and Dean talked about this post-game tonight, and he's right. The first two periods, defensively again, and into the third, this team did not play well. The responsibility that this team has shown previously with Dean, I don't know why. It's dried up a lot, but it's just not there. I thought Dumba tonight was awful. Brodin continues for him to scuffle. There were a lot of, there was a lot of play on the blue line tonight, and as far as the forwards coming back, that was far more like the Rangers game, because I actually thought on Monday they played well. But they got those first two games, Kings and Rangers, they were, I think to put it mildly, leaky. They were leaky again tonight. And what Dean said was, his point was, a lot of guys are and were pressing, and he's right about that. And he also said a lot of guys that, and this is very, for him, revealing, a lot of guys that you're not used to pressing are pressing. And I think Brodin is one. As Jackson says on our screen, that you just put up that comment. And yes, Dumba's a different story. He was awful too. But, Brodin is ordinarily Mr. Solid. Yep. And he looks like he's been pressing and not playing like he can play. And so my last question to Dean tonight in his post-game presser was, in your experience, does the win end this problem? Like, is there a ton to clean up here? Was this a mental thing? And he said, in my experience, I think it's pretty much done now. Like, just as far as the breakdowns. I also did not like the fact that I thought tonight the Wild came out pretty good. They scored the first goal, Dex. But in my opinion, for a large portion of that game, there were a lot of passengers too. It didn't look like a team that was on the precipice of a fourth consecutive loss. It looked like a team again that made a playoff run and was tired. And I still can't get my head around where that's coming from.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a preparedness issue, which I'm not questioning if Dean Addison and his staff didn't have this team prepared. It's just kind of confusing because the bread and butter of this team for 10 years has been its defensive play and its resiliency on their blue liners that have made life easier on their goaltenders. And so far, look, the goaltending hasn't lived up to par, but also the defense has just been atrocious. And from a group that shouldn't be regressing yet, if Brodin and Dumba and Spurgeon were all on their other side of 30 and this was happening, I think we could say, okay, Father Time's catching up here. That's just kind of how the NHL works. But these guys are all still, quote unquote, young. And defensemen of these calibers should be able to play into their 30s and into their late 20s, which a lot of these guys still are. Agreed. And I think that's what was so staggering throughout these first four, and it still is staggering. And maybe it is pressing, right? Maybe Dean Addison, who's an NHL coach and a grinder who has also played his fair share of NHL games, that says, hey, no, this now the pressure's off. It makes life easier, and I guess we'll be able to see that maybe in Boston on Saturday in an afternoon tilt on the road. Yep. But I also think that's a hefty assumption to make, that just, okay, it's over with, it's done. Because, yes, the track record of these defensemen says, no, they should be buckled down, they should be good players, they should make decisions that'll make their life easier on their own goaltender. But just in, hashtag sample size alert, there's been nothing, even tonight in the win, that suggests that, now all of a sudden it makes life easier because you got the win. I think that's certainly part of it. Don't get me wrong.
Right. I know what you're saying.
But that's why I don't think it automatically fixes it. Yeah.
I agree with you completely. And that I asked the question because I was curious what the response was. And look, I mean, Dean's response was probably largely wishful thinking, right? Because it's been bad. One quote I wrote down from Dean postgame though, and this speaks volumes to a guy who tries his best to keep things as positive as possible with the press. He said, "We have no composure defensively," and he's right. Yeah. And that's what's scary, and that's why I'm sort of with you. I don't know that the win fixes that, but It is weird that in some ways this team seemed to lose its discipline, and I can't explain that. Now, the Dumba one to me, Dex, is very intriguing because of this. I guess among the guys who when they don't play well, I'm not shocked, because he hasn't been the same since the fight with Tkachuk, 3 years ago now, and there's been times previously where he has definitely had breakdowns, and tonight I thought he was absolutely, for the most part, atrocious. This is an interesting discussion point because, this is the guy, like when it came to you're going to have to pick one, Fiala or Dumba, they picked the defenseman and they like him. And I think they like him as a person more. But the point is, like, this could become a major second guess because Dumba is definitely not playing up to his contract right now. And I think the fact that Brodin is scuffling too makes it worse because ordinarily I think what we're used to is Brodin sort of covering up for Dumba's fault. So like there's a lot of things in play here, and I am curious if they go on the road now for these next 5 games, and if we see more of a consistent effort because we saw the furious rallies in the third period tonight, but there's no way that you can sit there if you are Evason or the team and say that the first 2 periods made you happy. And Ryan Hartman alluded to the fact that between the second and third, something was said along the lines of this. We have been talking now for 3 games about how we're doing all the right things and we need to, and I guess basically what was said is it's time to shut up and just go play. And I felt like they did that, but that's 20 plus minutes of hockey. We need to see that way more prolonged, 60, and then into the next game.
Well, and from Ryan Hartman's vantage point there of doing all the right things, you have 3 games here, so you have 9 periods worth of hockey. It's not just a bad game. This is now 3 games worth of his own sample size. Back to your point of the defense not doing its job and just being just struggling in general. I tweeted out some of these stats from my guy Jay Fresh Hockey, who does a great job of hockey analytics. And if you want more of a breakdown of that, cheap shameless plug, go subscribe to his Patreon account. Because so far this season, he's partnered with his guy at Top Down Hockey, and they have logged, again, small sample size because we're only about a week into the NHL season. But they do these things called team cards where they kind of take all the information and they put it in a visualization chart that makes things easier to see. So he has percentage of 5-on-5 shot attempts against on net. So how many times are these shots going against on net? So far this season, and this was going into this game, so these stats will change, obviously, after this evening's slate of games, but the percentage of 5-on-5 shot attempts against on net this season, the Wild are allowing 66.1% of those shot attempts to go on net. That's the worst figure in the league. So the opposing team, 66% of their shots are going on net. For context, the Stars are number 1 this season. Only 44% of those shots are going on net. That's a humongous difference. 20% of the shots that the Stars are stopping aren't going on net. Percentage of also then, let's also look at shots blocked, right? Like the selling out, right? It's the only sport where the term selling out actually means a good thing, and that's in hockey, right? So in terms of shot attempts that have been blocked, the Wild are only blocking 19.5% of shots, which is weird to me because this is a team that has historically always done a really good job at clogging lanes and blocking those shots, and that's 30th in the NHL right now. For, again, more context, the Islanders are blocking 32% of shots. That's a humongous difference. And, again, the sample sizes will get a little bit cleaner and better as we watch more and more games and you have more sample size to work with. But that's a staggering amount. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury and Philippe Gustafsson aren't going to bail you out all the time. And when your defense is giving out that many amount of shots, that's a problem, and a significant one at that. So that's, I think, what is so staggering to me. It's not just, yes, goaltending's been horrendous, goals saved above expected. I gave you those stats earlier this week, too. Those have been bad. But I think what's so shocking to me is that the amount of shots that are not being blocked and the amount of shots that are going on net is way too high for a team that still has defenders that should be doing a lot better job at limiting those attempts.
And tonight's game, no question, was filled with flaws, and those flaws. And Fleury saved, for the first time this season, his team's bacon. I get that. But, and so one thing I think that we will see immediately on Saturday, and I'm not going to suggest that this is a complete fix, but I think Goligoski comes out, and if John Merrill is set to return, he plays. Calen Addison, to me, while he has flaws, okay, offensively, he brings you, especially, and he had an assist tonight on the game-tying power play goal by Zuccarello. He brings you what you need. So, like, I like what he does. In fact, he sort of does what I've wanted Dumba to do. So, but John Merrill, to me, he is certainly no all-star, but he's going to provide Declan a more steadying presence. Goligoski doesn't bring much here. He just doesn't. I mean, I'm glad he got to the milestone. He's a local guy, a former golfer. God bless him. But I think if we're calling a spade, I would ask you this: what does he bring? Now, the Dumba thing to me also is concerning because that has to change as well. Brodin, and I guess I would call it a funk. Like I don't remember seeing this from him before.
I agree.
But I mean, I think he comes out of that funk. But do you juggle things? Do you try and put Spurgeon with Brodin, Dumbo with somebody else? I don't know, but I mean, you definitely have to get your defensive structure right because it's not right now. And secondly, you got to get your blue line pairings right. And for whatever reason, so far, it doesn't seem like Dumba and Brodin come anywhere near the chemistry that we've been so used to for years seeing them have.
Yeah, Travis on our YouTube channel suggests this, that now that Merrill is in, Goose is probably done with his 1,000th game. And
press box.
I don't know if Goose will be scratched in Boston. I don't know, but I do think that you're going to see if anyone's an odd man out, it's Goligoski. You can't scratch Addison. You're obviously not going to scratch any of the other 5 defensemen. Like I think it would take an awful lot. The only other way then he plays is if there's an injury to one of those 5 guys in Spurgeon, Dumba, Brodin, and Addison, right? Like then it's a lot different. I just think too what's going to become so interesting as we get through this season and we get to an off-season time, and I know Gary Bettman hinted at this in some meetings this week that now because of the escrow being paid out, salary cap could actually go up by $4 million, but that is actually a significant chunk for the NHL
if it's paid off. Yes,
if it's paid off by the end of the season.
Yep.
Dumba's in a contract year, and when you still have the buyouts that are lingering against you, you're going to have to make a difficult decision of, do we extend Matt Dumba probably around a similar mark? It might not be up to 5. Or do you ride Calen Addison, who will cost a fifth of what Matt Dumba is going to make? From a cap side, I go with the latter.
It's not hard.
That's not even a math game there.
But the decision, but what's going to come back to become a very fair talking point then is, should you have tried to move Dumba and kept Fiala, or at least made an attempt to?
Well, yeah.
Because that's going to be the talking point. Because you are going to. I mean, that's the thing. Okay, you are going to miss his scoring, and when he goes through his hot streaks, like you just can't. You can't snap your fingers and be like, Kirill, we need more. You're going to get production from guys who have previously probably given you production. But when Kevin Fiala got in those zones, like those guys are hard to find. So it'll be a very fair discussion point. If Dumba continues to play a very flawed game, to be like, I wonder if the right move was made. And that was a first guess among a lot of folks. Like, this has been a talking point up until now. I just get that frustration from some fans.
Two things. Number one, I if anyone on Judd's Hockey Show, actually, I might be the one who has always been in the Kevin Fiala camp and defended him more than you have. I'm not going to play too much of revisionist history. If it goes down the road that they move on from Matt Dumba at the deadline, or they moved on from Matt Dumba in free agency, like, well, he could have had Kevin Fiala. Like, luckily, this Wild offense has looked good enough. I'm not trying to say that Kevin Fiala still would be successful, because I think he would be here, but I won't lose too much sleep over that. It's more of, do you have a better and more capable defender in Calen Addison that costs a fifth of that? I understand where you're coming from the decision to keep Matt Dumba over Kevin Fiala. Totally get it. That's a valid case to make. I wouldn't have too much revisionist history on it, and not to completely change topics, but Matt Boldy looks great right through the first 4 games. What did you? I barely noticed this guy again here tonight, Judd. What did you notice from Marco Rossi though?
I was actually going to bring that up. So through so he was on technically the third line. He centered Gaudreau and Boldy tonight, okay? Through 2 periods of play. And when Greenway got hurt, they rotated like Caprizov and Boldy and wingers into the fourth line. So their time on ice spiked up. But just for comparison's sake, through 2 periods of play, Marco Rossi had played 9:29. Matthew Boldy was at 11:28. And Gaudreau was at 10:41. Okay, in the final box score. So after Rossi had played 9:29 through 2 periods, he ended up with 11 minutes total. And late in the game, they actually sent out a line and had Goudreau centering Boldy and Duhaime, and they took Rossi off. And I continue to not like this. I understand there's concern. I understand that the team has not been playing well. I understand you don't want to lose. But I just continue to wonder, when are you going to get this kid? Like, do you not trust him that much? And if that's the case, should he be here? It's frustrating to me to see this, because I don't know that this is the best way to go about developing him. Now, I see that quote that says, as the crew goes by here trying to put stuff.
It's Dino, it's Matt Dunlap cooking you
away.
For,
no,
for
it's just it's the fine crew here in the kitchen. Skyhawk 494 saying, Rossi needs to put on some serious muscle, too small and weak. Well, first of all, I would disagree with that. I thought in the preseason he showed that he wasn't as weak. I mean, he's small, so he looks like he's weak, but I mean, he's not as weak as we thought. But the other thing is, I think to bench him for third periods, if that's how you feel about him, then I don't know that he should be here.
Yeah,
I
think
he should be, but yeah.
Just send him down. I have no.
But this is getting frustrating.
Yeah, yes,
because
that's
what's
my
your
point.
intention here?
You and I and other Wild fans are now starting to pull out your hair over your top prospect who made the roster and had a hell of a camp and even got some time with the top line in preseason to prove if he can play here or not.
Yes,
at this point, if you're only going to play him 8 to 9 minutes, and look, the Greenway injury forced some shuffling around because you were down a forward for 40 minutes. Yeah. So I'll give somewhat of the benefit of the doubt to Dino that then someone's playing time kind of gets sacrificed for that. I understand the math there again.
But it doesn't really have. But if this is the case,
but if this is the case, then just send him down. Just send him down. Yeah. And I won't lose sleep over that either. Just send him down to Iowa and let him play top line minutes.
Exactly right. Yeah. In fact, so with 1:43 left, score tied at 3, third period. Okay, face off in the Canucks zone, and they put Boldy on. And they put Goudreau on, and that's when they put Duhaime on, and they basically said to Rossi, "We don't trust you." That to me, I get it. It's an important game. It's an important draw. I get all that, okay? And Duhaime has more experience. I also get that. But my question to Dean would be this: when are you going to get the kid this experience? And by the way, this was not a defensive zone draw, so it's not like if you lose it, oh my God, the puck's in the back of the net. This was an offensive zone draw, and Rossi's supposed to be an offensive player. So yeah, I think that I think you need to make a decision here. And if you're going to pull the plug on him every time the going gets tough, which it sort of feels like that's what they're doing so far, I don't think you're doing him favors by having him watch it from the bench, unless they've got an idea that we can't see. I don't like it.
Well, Jacob here on our YouTube channel says, by the way, hit the subscribe button for Daily Minnesota Sports Entertainment. This is Judd's Hockey Show. He says, what about Beckman, as in Adam Beckman, who is another good stud and a good depth guy that they got down there in Iowa, who has shown that he can play top line minutes and play. Again, though, I think, and this is not to berate Jacob's point, but if they called up Adam Beckman, I don't think the only way he would play significant minutes again is if there was injuries or if there was ineffectiveness that he would have to play significant minutes. If they made this simple swap, Adam Beckman for Marco Rossi, I don't think anything changes. I think Beckman plays 11 minutes a night. He's also a winger. He's not a center like Marco Rossi, so that kind of changes up things too. But at this rate, if this is going to be the case, and look, I had high expectations for even a guy like Tyson Jost, who is now pinned on every single line through 4 games, and honestly I wouldn't be shocked if he was even scratched at this point too, because he's been that much of a non-factor. I don't think calling up Beckman changes anything. For Rossi's sake and just for his development's sake, it makes sense for him to go down to Iowa and probably play with Adam Beckman and probably play top line minutes.
Right, exactly.
Because he's not going to do anything here, and nor if this is the kind of weird doghouse he's in, I don't think it does him any good.
It's not a doghouse. I think they're just concerned about what is going to happen to him, and they clearly don't trust him. So I don't think he's in trouble. I think they just don't trust him. But he's your future. So that's the thing. If you play Duhaime and Beckman, you know what? That's cool, man. They're prospects, they're young players, but they're not your future. I'm talking about your future. I'm talking about your top-line center, hopefully in a year. I mean, he played better tonight, but let's be honest here. Ryan Hartman ain't your future number 1 center, and the sooner that you can take him out of that role, in my opinion, the better. He was Case Keenum 2017 for this team last year. That was Hartman last year. The slippers had to be returned now. He's not a bad player, but in no way, shape, or form, if you're going to make a playoff run, do you want to go in with a depth chart that has him as your top line center? I mean, we saw that in the playoffs last year, right? So my Rossi thing is, it's not just the now, it's the future. And if you're going to be like, and the problem too is when you tell him, hey, Marco, don't go out for this shift, you're not going to go out for that shift. I don't think that's a good way to develop a player. Like some of this is just mental, right? Like what's mentally fair to the player. And I think Marco Rossi, no matter where he is, needs to be playing significant playing time, and he needs to be in situations in which he feels that there's trust there. And right now, I think there's, words don't mean a lot, actions do. And right now, Dean Evison is telling everyone and their brother, I don't trust him. I don't think I can play him. And I've seen this movie before. Drives me absolutely crazy because I think it can do damage to a player. I don't like it. And so, yeah, just find him a place to play. There's places he can go. And you know what? If he goes down to Iowa and lights it up and plays great, bring him back up here and play him.
Yeah. That's exactly what I would do, too. I just send him down to Iowa. Let him, I know they're going to travel tomorrow, and there's just no point for him to honestly to go on the road trip unless he's playing significant minutes.
Hey, on Caprizov, I got a question for you. So he and Zuccarello both had nice games. Both had 7 shots on goal.
Yep.
And I tweeted this out before the third period, and I still believe it to be true. I tweeted out, it is very clear that Kirill Kaprizov is trying to do way too much by himself. Like he was carrying the puck around by himself. And look, he's fun to watch. It's great to watch. But he was trying to be a one-man show because the team was panicking. But I also tweeted, if the Wild's going to, at that time, rally to win this game, he's going to have to be a key role player or a key player in that, which he was. How did you feel about his game? Because I was torn at times about, Kirill, you should not be trying to do this all yourself, but yet I sympathize because he's so talented that I get that he is single-handedly in his mind trying to lift his team. What do you think of that?
I have no issue right now with a star player of his caliber trying to do too much. They're trying to win their first game of the season. He has the talent to do so. If this was someone else trying to play the role of Batman when he's clearly a Robin, then I have a bigger issue in that retrospect. I don't have too much of an issue with Kirill, and even that first shift into overtime, which was like, what the hell? I know it's 3-on-3, but the first minute of that where they won the faceoff technically against 2 guys in Vancouver who could win a draw, and then they just circled their own zone for 60 seconds. And it kind of felt like if they give them one, which they did, by the way. I mean, Pettersson almost, I think, won the game on his first shot.
He just missed the net.
Just missed the damn net.
Just missed it.
I would have been a lot more furious. But no, I don't have too much of an issue with Kirill trying to play the hero and maybe even doing too much and overcompensating sometimes.
Right.
He's your superstar. I want the puck on my superstar stick. I want him to control the game. And he has the capabilities to be a game-changing player. We're kind of not jaded. That's not the right word, but we don't really know what this is like. We're getting now the 3rd season of Kirill, but we haven't really experienced what it's like to have the true superstar. Zach Parise was a great worker and a great guy to root for. Gabrick at his peak was close, but still not at this level. Even Fiala, when he was hot, didn't have the ability to carry you. He just would go on stretches where he was the quote-unquote game breaker and score big goals. Kirill Kaprizov can do this, and there's going to be lapses sometimes where, he'll make a turnover here and there. But no, I personally, I'm cool with the superstar player being as damn good as he is.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying, in my mind, there's a medium between what he was trying to do and what he ended up doing, and that's the difficult thing. Because I totally get it. He is a talented player, an incredible player. He's a superstar. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, ESPN's rankings had him as the 7th best player in the league currently, which is incredible. So I get all of that. I'm just saying, in the second period, it felt like he was trying to take the game by the throat, and it's like, dude, you gotta use your teammates a bit. And I appreciated what he did, and it was impressive. But I think the biggest takeaway for me tonight is this though. Marc-Andre Fleury's play was huge. The last 2 periods, he was huge. He didn't face a shot in the 3-on-3 OT. Caprizov scores the goal when when they actually had a delayed penalty. By the way, funny story. Dino basically said he froze and was afraid to send out the extra attacker.
Yeah,
he said Foligno was standing there like, "Do you want me to go?" And according to Dean, he said, "I couldn't even talk because he was like,
I was literally waiting for them to screw it up."
No, Dean said, and I guess so. If you go back and watch, it might basically. I think the Wild, because Flower came off and they did get a guy on. But Dean's point was after the complete screw up in the last game, in a similar situation with 4-on-4, and this one being 3-on-3, Dean said like he froze. He couldn't do it. He's like, I couldn't even talk to him. So, but anyway. It's over.
I thought the same thing, and shout out to Todd, who's getting dumber by the minute listening to this. Thank you for listening, Todd. Hit the subscribe button for Daily Minnesota Sports Entertainment. This is Judd's Hockey Show on Score North. Stupidity. I was waiting for the stupidity of some type of situation with Dean too, sending out an extra attacker. So I'm glad that that did not happen. But yeah, hey, you take the win any way you get it. They're 1-3, and some little afternoon puck on Saturday, Judd Zolgad. I love afternoon matinee hockey.
Boston is I believe, of all the teams in the league, I want to say that they have the most matinee Saturday games. It's absolutely fantastic. I love it too. Yes. In fact, I want more here. Saturday, because you know why I'm old. Saturday afternoon matinees are great when you're older.
I was looking at the schedule. They do, I believe, because the NHL's classic for this. I believe the Wild are home against Toronto at 1:00 on Black Friday.
Oh yeah! Oh really?
That'll be
I
Black
love that
Friday.
one.
They're
That's
here,
their game.
and I believe it's a 1 p.m. game at the X. So
I believe the X has locked into almost always now hosting a Black Friday game.
Yes,
they've had the occasional. It seemed like they had a fairly lengthy stretch, like the North Stars did back in the day, of New Year's Eve home games. Mm-hmm. But I want to say the last couple of years, and I know that this year that's not the case. That they do play on December 31st, but it's not here at the X. Anyway. Wild wins. Streak is done. 5-game trip. Take us home, Dick.
Yeah, hit the subscribe button for Daily Minnesota Sports Entertainment. Yes, the Wild are finally victorious. They've won their first game of the season. Hit the subscribe button for Daily Minnesota Sports Entertainment right here on Score North. This is Judd's Hockey Show. We break down Minnesota Wild content and Minnesota Wild games. Of course, we're the home of Flagrant Howls, too, with Bill Mackey and Kyle Tighe. And Mackey, Judd, write that down. Rap with Rossi. Plenty of things on the Score North YouTube channel. And also headed over to Purple Daily for Daily Minnesota Vikings Entertainment. And finally, after a win, we finally get to play this.
Listen, you guys know what this is all about, right? Right? What's it all about? Spurgey?
Hard work and having fun.
That. This is about winning.